Thank you. Is this working okay back there? Glad to be here for this meeting in Colombia here. And initially, I'd like to thank James Way for sponsoring my participation at your meeting. Been asked to talk about the breeder side, the reproduction side of effects in the hatchery, and so I'm going to kind of go over through a couple of things here from the breeder side, and before we get in, then I'll tie a lot of it into some embryological effects. I'm housed up at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Our department has about 25 faculty that study just poultry science, and my area that I work in there is particularly from the breeder and hatchery both, kind of from the day-old parent stock through even to the first week or so in the broilers. So we do a lot of research in different areas along those lines. Just kind of starting off, the broiler, when we're talking about fertility and talking about reproduction, the broiler breeder male typically gets blamed for our fertility problems in commercial flocks. From my beginning in this industry, that's always been the feeling is if we've got a fertility problem, it's a male issue. We've got to address the males, and I think in large part we can look at that. But there is some other factors in there, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about those today on the female side, maybe than on the male side. This goes back to some work I did a number of years ago. One of those things I wish I still had the information on, where we had groups of birds. We had about 400 breeder hens, and we had them in individual cages. And the nature of our study, we were artificially inseminating the hens the exact same dose of semen once a week, every week for 40 weeks. And as we got through that, we noticed that there was about 10 to 20% of the hens, week after week after week, had subpar fertility, the same hens, for the entire 40-week production cycle. So it jumped in my mind and says, okay, if we can have 10 to 20% of hens in a population that for one reason or another have poor fertility, and this is with artificial insemination, are there factors there that can all of a sudden we can get 30 or 40%? Is there situations occur to where we have a bigger problem with fertility due to the hen effect rather than the male effect? And so kind of got me looking at this, and so some of the things I'm going to talk about are addressed more on that, is what things in the hen contribute to fertility and fertility problems that we might see. In preface to this, I always begin most of my talks in this area starting off with fertilization, just explaining to you the fertilization process. I think even the talk this afternoon, I think it's always important to really know and understand the whole fertilization process. So we can look at this little cycle here. Start off with insemination, whether it's artificial or natural, sperm storage, transport, recognition of binding sites, an acrosome reaction where the sperm actually gain access to the female genetic material to fertilize, then fertilization. And so I'm going to go through each of these somewhat briefly before I get into the rest of my talk. The fertilization process occurs at the upper regions of the oviduct. Right after ovulation, we have a yolk or an ovum ovulated. Within minutes, fertilization occurs. I did a lot of work a number of years ago. Some of the literature will tell you 15 to 30 minutes, and I believe it's within 2 to 3 minutes. As soon as any albumin gets put on that yolk, fertilization process is over. And this occurs at the upper regions of the oviduct here. Again, within minutes this occurs. The ova is present there for up to 15 minutes in that the infundibulum area. And then is that a little better? Okay. And then from that point, then the egg or ovum passes down the oviduct to complete formation of the egg. That formation of the egg takes 24 to 26 hours to occur at a body temperature of 40 to 41 degrees Celsius. So what is going on during this process? We have a fertilized egg that's at a temperature that's conducive to